Happy 4th of July, I guess. Well, the United States, people still falsely believe that it's a democratic constitutional republic that has officially died in February, where the SCOTUS has declared that the President of the United States, technically we had two co-presidents, Trump and Musk, are officially a king and all but name. They're above the law, and not even the Supreme Court can do anything to stop it anymore. Under the Nazi Monarchist Party of America, or more commonly known as the Trumpist faction of the Republican Party, and Turning Point USA, which is the caucus that's currently within the Trumpist faction, are basically hold the supermajority in power, based under the principles of neo-fascism, neo-Nazism, electoral neo-monarchism, and right-wing accelerationism, and theocratic Christian nationalism. At the 4th of July, people think that we should talk about this relationship. I have said many times my videos before, and I post resource academic scholarly research that proves my case that fascism has its origins in the United States proper, starting all the way back to the founding fathers, where people like Thomas Jefferson and other similar people like Van Bells who believe that non-white races not only are inferior, but they are outright diseases that are supposed to be cured, quote unquote, and they wanted an Atlantic empire that spans all the Americas. And again, George Washington said it himself: the Electoral College, the Congress, the Supreme Court are checks and balances against the will of the people. They were against democracy. They said it as such. Many of them were aristocrat slave owners. But skipping to the early history and go straight between the 19 late 1900s, so like 1905 all the way to 1945. Why do I want to focus about that time period, which is often forget? This map you see right here is the map of Nazi Germany, of the idea that Hitler had if everything went according to plan. This is the map that he wanted for the world. Everything you see in the gray, in the color gray, regardless of the shading, is under Nazi control, right? And by extension, even though Antarctica is blink, there has to be some regions there as well. The United States is noticeably blink because Hitler himself has stated multiple times that he was inspired by the United States. His Limbersbrog to go to the east of Europe for his conquest to create the dominant Aryan race was based on the United States' manifest destiny, which was developed as early as the 1820s by the fourth ever president Maroon with the Maroon Doctrine. And his Limbersburg and his racial laws were based on the Jim Crow laws. And he said it himself that the Confederate States of the United States was the actual United States, and they were on the right side of history. The first forced sterilized the program in the world happened in the United States during Teddy Roosevelt's presidency. During the 1910s, under Woodrow Wilson's presidency, you can argue that he was the first, debatably, proto-fascist president proper. And with the revival of the Ku Klux Klan and the discrimination against African Americans, like the Ely Massacre, for example, and the Red Summer, and the persecution against people who were communist, socialist, and anarchist, which is often considered the first Red Scare. For me personally, I consider the first Red Scare from the 1830s to the 1860s by the fear of utopian socialism. I already did a video about that long ago. Besides that, under Woodrow Wilson's presidency, the Ku Klux Klan, or the Second Klan, was at the peak of their power. It was around 4 million members. And even the Freemasons, many joined each other's organization. KKK became Freemason, many Freemasons joined KKK, and the founder of the Second Klan was a Freemason himself. In fact, right before they joined the war in World War II, around 78% of the population were against the idea of going to war with Germany. Some people even believed that the Jews were a bigger threat than the Germans. So the common sentiment about the people were either pro-Axis or they were neutral. They don't care what happened to the other people. We just want to still make business because they were capitalists in the end of the day. And FDR was the one rare exception. But even then, he is not guilty when he did concentration camps against Japanese Americans without trial. But throughout the 1910s, all the way to the 1930s, many things happened. Like, for example, you know, They developed the Immigration Restricted, which was limitation on Europeans in the country based on the racial hierarchy in Gen. There was also the American Protection Association, an anti-Catholic organization promote the idea of 100% Americanism. And like I said about the Eugenics program, the first sterilized laws happened in the United States proper. You know, like hell, even the Veteran Legion, the largest veteran organization in the world, used to have under fascist authoritarian tendencies in its early history. During that time, the Ku Klux Klan was so popular during this time that even the President Harry Truman considered joining the Ku Klux Klan to win more votes. And even after that, there were many Klansmen who joined the U.S. government. Right? For example, in the 1920s, they have 11 governors, 75 representatives, and 16 senators. One of them, for example, is James Vardaman, who was the governor of Mississippi, who was an open white supremacist who praised the lynching of African Americans. You know, we also have the U.S. Senator from South Carolina, Penn Tillman, and we also have the governor of Georgia, Hoke Smith, who promote black disfranchisement and segregated policies. We also had the J.P. Morgan banker, Thomas W. Malmo, who openly praised Mussolini as the man who saved capitalism. So there's that. We also have Republican Senator Reed Smoot, who had close relations with Mussolini and the Italian fascist government. The U.S. government itself recognized Mussolini's fascist regime in 1924. So there's that. Yeah. We also had the infamous Mississippi Senator Theodore Bilbo, who was notorious for opening the idea of Anglo-Saxon superiority and promoting mob lynchings against African Americans. You know, we also had the infamous Georgian governor Hugo Talmadge, who not only was the first openly self-declared fascist who read Hitler's Mein Kampf 7 times, he actually did one of the very few examples of successful coup in the United States to gain power, imitating Mussolini's style of government. We also have Johnny Rankin, who defended the segregation and anti-conspiracy theories, like anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. You know, the Henry Ford, who was a hardcore fan of Hitler and promoted the anti-Semitic, newspapers. We also have like the mayor of New Jersey, Frank Hogg, who had a tight control on the state and using violence that he declared saying that I am the law, you know. So, there's that, so it's like he considered himself as a dictator in all but name. There was no freedom of the press, rigged elections, and a massive surveillance, you know. And Thomas E. Watson, who was a U.S. senator, who was a white supremacist, anti-Semitic, and he was responsible for various mass lynchings, advocating for the massacres of non-white people. you know. So there's that. Let's not forget the Immigration Act of 1924 and human experimentation against Puerto Ricans in the before World War II. By the 1930s, doing injecting Puerto Ricans with cancer and tuberculosis, trying to commit genocide. So there's that. Giving Puerto Ricans U.S. citizenship is an excuse to bring more bodies in the world that nobody has, and declare Puerto Ricans as second-class citizens because the majority of the white are non-white or incapable of self-determination. All these examples can be seen, and the Hitler himself has expressed admiration to the United States. That's why he never planned to invade the United States. It wasn't until the events of Pearl Harbor where they changed the idea, and Americans were against the idea of going to war to begin with until Pearl Harbor happened, right? That he believed after his world domination, the map you see about the world map that he wants to be under control, there was going to be an inevitable war against two Aryan superpowers, which is the Iraq and the US. Right? He considered two both Aryan superpowers fighting for supremacy to prove who is the true Aryan, like the best of the two, right? So he had ideas to use what's called the American Bomber Project, who used bombers to bomb New York, in particular, U-boat submarines to bomb certain coast areas of the United States, which he did in some parts after the declaration of the war. There was a spy ring, which was a complete disaster. Right. And there was the infamous German-American boom with around 25,000 members, where they did the infamous speeches in Madison Square Garden with 20,000 people. You see the image of George Washington as an example of the original fascists, right? And with the same thing with Trump did with the Madison Square Garden, the same thing, 20,000 people full of racist rhetoric, calling Puerto Ricans, the island, a trash island, and various racist anti-Semitic conspiracy statements. And Trump himself has admitted that he has a book of interspecies in since the 1990s. And if you see the rhetoric he does, like growing vermins, poisoning the blood and stuff like that, straight from the book itself, straight from the man himself speeches. So yeah, that's what I had to say. United States is the beginning, is is fascism, and right during the interwar period between World War One and World War Two, and right before World War Two, from the 1910s to the 19 until 1941, the United States was already under fascist power already, and it had pro-fascist views, and Hitler considered it an ally until Pearl Harbor happened. So yeah, this is 4th of July. I hope anybody who isn't a a a straight white Protestant Christian man who is an ordained minister, a Freemason lawyer, rich billionaire. I hope you join your two co-kings, Musk and Trump. Yeah, that's all I had to say. Happy 4th of fucking July, you fucking fascists.